and get a 15-minute warning. Okay, so first of all, on any source type that you may have, you can always, if you ingest that data, you want to make sure you have the time and date stamp and the event break correct. If the fields don't appear, you can always look at something like this, right? I'm going to, maybe within this event, I'm going to expand this event. I'm going to say extract fields. This is going to look a little funky because it's already been extracted, but I could pick something in the event. I'm going to use a regular expression, and let's say that I had a URL, or I had, hold on, say next. And now, if I had something in here, whatever it was the port number, it was the URI, it was the username, it was the method, a get or a post. I'm going to say whatever I name it. It's probably going to throw up on me because it knows it's already been extracted. But it will then go through, and these all happen to say threat, but if it was something like a method, it would have a get, it would have a post. It's building the regular expression for you based on that particular location, so I can actually see that. Now, those of you who write regular expression a lot would want to maybe add some efficiencies into that regular expression. But please know that if the fields are not extracted, you can do an inline regular expression, or you can use the field extractor to build the extractions for you. When this happens, it's putting that in the back end in Splunk, and you can package that together as an app. And guess what? You're now an app builder. And we'll talk about that in a second. But you can certainly do it for any custom source. There doesn't have to be an app. You could choose to package together your field extractions or any reports or dashboards that you have made. So I'm going to go back on the PowerPoint because there's a lot more to cover here, and I know we're running behind. So let's see how quickly I can hit these. Okay, best practices. So all of these areas you're going to want to cover with a successful Splunk deployment. You want to think about your architecture and infrastructure, and if I don't have a chance to get to bucket rotation and hot, warm, and cold data, please feel free to step up afterwards. We can talk about that one-on-one. But we're looking at getting data in today. You want to think about user onboarding. Who should have access to Splunk? When they get into Splunk, what are they supposed to be able to see and do? What are we going to do from a training perspective? Is there some free resources available versus who would we want to have use more formal courses? We also want to think about how we're going to inform users. So if there's a new data source that's available, or a new version of Splunk that has new features that they may want to use for their particular use cases, you want to think about whether or not you're going to have some sort of internal portal or communication or newsletter or user group that creates your foundation for communicating about what's available and what resources your users can leverage. And the final is staffing here. Staffing is really key. So all of these tasks in every Splunk deployment need to happen. So they're all going to happen. In a smaller deployment, it might be one person. I could be responsible for architecting Splunk and doing the system administration and being the person that helps people with search and develops new apps. And I could also be the knowledge manager. The knowledge manager is the person that does is the person that really knows those data sources, and they're understanding what the data interpretation is, the classification, the enrichment. In a larger organization, though, those roles start becoming split out. So I'm going to come back here. Okay, so tasks for getting data in. We're running probably about 5 minutes late. I apologize, so we're going to run a few minutes over because I didn't realize how far behind we were. So for new data sources, as they're coming in, you're going to want to think about getting a sample of the data. Talking to the person who owns that data, create a form for them that says, give me a sample of the data. What's the timestamp? What do you consider the important timestamp? Is it single line or multi-line? Have them tell you what they want to do with it. Are they wanting to alert on something? Are there particular searches that matter? Have them educate you about what the fields are that matter to them. Also, you may have data retention policies as an organization. We keep all of our data for 3 years. They might have data that really it's only relevant for 7 days. Wouldn't that be nice to know right up front? Because then you can say, okay, if you're sure you only want it for 7 days, wow, we just lowered our total cost of ownership because we don't need the extra storage to keep all that stuff around for 3 years. So be very conversational and make sure that you document this as somebody's looking at a new data source. Also identify who should have access to that and whether or not there is data that from the common information model that will map to it. I'm going to go as fast as I can. Okay, host, source, and source type. You want to get those right. So in my case, I was just doing the host, but typically you want that to ensure that's the host that generated the event. The source and source type, you want to get those right because it enables you to trace things back significantly easier. It enables you to call and make changes to a particular source type and have that modified as a whole. You don't want to use like default settings. The index you want to think about, I'm not sure if we'll have time to get to it, whether or not you're using something like a test index. Where possible, don't pull data into your clean environment. Set up a test index, point the data there first, kind of look at it, do a sniff test on it, make sure it looks right before you don't want to muddy the waters and send that directly into your production index where you've got a lot of other clean sources. And then this last two things here on what would be your left, the event boundary line breaking and dates, time and stamp. I want to explain why these are so important. So if Splunk keys off of time and we don't have the event break right, what happens when the event break isn't right? If I think something is single line and it's multi-line or vice versa, right? What's going to happen is I'm going to end up possibly with multiple events in a single event, and that means these individual events have lost their time and date stamp. I'm not reading them. Or worse, not worse, they're all bad. I might have a huge event, and now because I didn't have the break correct, I chopped the event in half, and I've taken the time and date stamp with the first half. What happens with the second half of the event? Well, it didn't have a time and date stamp. What did I say we do? If there's no time and date stamp, we do index time, right? So sometimes people say, I can't find my data, I can't find my data. If you can't find your data, it's probably because the time and date stamp was incorrect. And you might want to start looking out at some edge places in time, like the future, and things like that that wouldn't really make sense, because you might find your missing data there, and then you can purge and clean that out and delete that. But that's why that time and date stamp is so important, and that's why the event break is so important. So pre-boarding essentials, we're going to make sure that you get these slides. But again, you want to find out where that data originates, how you're going to collect it, who needs access to that data, who's the owner of the data. So if you're stuck and you have questions, who are you going to talk to about it? You want to understand the impact of the data. Is this data that's just available for one business unit, or does this also fold up and impact something like enterprise security or PCI? So you also want to make sure you get a big enough sample of the data. Don't get 2 or 3 events and then you go, wow, that's great. And then it turns out, well, yeah, every once in a while there's a multi-line event. Get that now. So make sure that the data sample that you get is representative of the variety that you would see within that sample. And then identify and map out the fields. The common information model, I think we possibly are going to be skipping over that, but the common information model is key. It normalizes all of the data and all of the fields so that you're all talking in a common language, so that if one source says src IP and the other one says src underscore IP, everything's communicating in the same, using the same fields, and that enables you to then support sort of the downstream apps. Okay. So your friend is the data previewer. Use it, use it, use it. Use it to fix, to find and to fix problems before getting the data into your environment. Make sure that that event breaking and timestamp is correct. And if you do need to go into the weeds, if you do need to go into the advanced features or look at the configuration files on the back end, know that these, when I first started, it was really overwhelming for me. Like, wow, there's all these parameters you can use. Remember I said 95% of the time, there's some things that will get you by? These are those. So finally I had one of my senior coworkers who said, Elisa, stop. Take time prefix, time format, max timestamp look ahead. These are what these do. These can meet your needs 95% of the time. And I printed them off and I kept them in my little office space, okay? So for example, max timestamp look ahead. So Splunk is designed to be really efficient. Maybe only go about 50 characters into an event to look for a timestamp, because that's where it normally occurs. So we don't want to read all that data unnecessarily. But if your data timestamp is much closer, you can make Splunk a little bit more efficient on each event. Well, now if you multiply that times millions of events, that's a huge performance boost. Or you might need to change that because maybe your event is 200 characters in. So just be aware that these simple parameters are really, really going to meet your needs for the majority of the time. Okay, common information model, I sort of already touched on that. Again, you'll get the slide, but it's all about speaking in a common language across all of these various sources and normalizing that data and using common naming conventions so that you can use things with some of the out-of-box apps for data model acceleration and some of the downstream reports and dashboards. Let me hit the next. Sorry, I've got a little bit of a delay there. Okay, I did want to, last slide, a special note, or last really critical technical one, a special note about syslog. Syslog is a protocol. It is not a source type. So please ignore it as a source type. So the reason we don't want you to use syslog as a source type is because there can be a whole lot of stuff in there. And that carries multiple source types. And then you're going to spend a lot of time trying to piece those out of source type as a data source. So use the actual source type that you're looking for instead of identifying it as source type. And use things like syslog-ng or rsyslog to pre-filter the data before it's coming in. Use the universal forwarder and HEC where possible. If you want, you were talking about how to build apps, or there were questions about apps. There is a new add-on builder that's available on Splunk Base. So this is a fantastic resource for you to for creating a REST API scripted or modular inputs, leveraging the GUI. So that'll give you a great jump start for building content. And then of course we have a slide on where to go to learn more. So there are tons of videos available. There's documents on how to get data in. There's time format variations, as well as the dev manual. And I did want to mention r.conf user conference as well, which I'm sure you've heard about today. All of the previous sessions from previous years are available. And we hope that you will be attending .conf, or hopefully as well, based on your user experience and journey with Splunk, be soon submitting a topic. The call for speakers is open, so I believe. So, so if you would like to, share part of your journey of becoming a Splunk user, you can end up with a free pass to Conf and have an opportunity to see amazing other content presented live and engage with your peers. We also partner that up or marry that up with training and certification for organizations that want to do that as one trip, or it makes it easier for approval processes. So I know we're way over time, so I'm going to unmic. If you have additional questions, thank you for asking such great questions. And for those who waited, if you have additional questions, I'll take those on the side. Thank you.